Ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest. Most of what you've been told about who you are, what you must do, and where you should go didn't come from you. It came from voices that never asked what your soul needed, only what the world wanted. You are drowning in a sea of noise, each wave trying to mold you, define you, and sell you an identity you never agreed to. But what if I told you you were never meant to follow the world? You are meant to remember something deeper, something ancient, something silent but powerful. And that's why you must listen, not outward, but inward. Stay. Don't skip this, because the moment you begin to hear your true self, everything you thought you knew will fall away, and what remains will finally feel like truth. The world is loud, not because it knows more, but because it wants control. It demands you to chase things, titles, money, validation. And yet, have you noticed? The more you listen, the more confused you feel. The more you comply, the emptier you become. Because the world doesn't know who you are. It never did. It only knows what it wants from you. From the moment you're born, you're handed a script. Be successful, they say. Be likable. Be safe. But nobody tells you, be yourself. Why? Because your truth threatens their control. You see, when you stop listening to the noise, you become unpredictable. And an awakened soul is dangerous to a world built on sleep. The irony? The voice you need to hear isn't miles away. It's right here, in your breath, in your stillness, in your gut. It's subtle, but it's constant. And it's never been wrong. But here's the trap. The world taught you to doubt it. Don't trust your feelings, they say. Do what's logical. Yet logic without soul is just machinery. You're not a machine. You're a mystery. And mysteries aren't solved by data. They're discovered through awareness. So stop listening to broken people tell you how to be whole. Stop seeking truth in a marketplace built on deception. Stop believing that louder means wiser. Go within. Close the gap between what you think and what you feel. Sit in silence, not to be productive, but to be present. Because the most sacred guidance doesn't shout. It waits until you're ready to hear. And when you finally listen, really listen, not to the opinions, not to the algorithms, not to the pressure, but to the quiet knowing inside you, you'll realize something profound. You are never lost. You were only distracted. So don't listen to the world. Not because it's evil, but because it's confused. Lost people shout instructions from moving trains. That's not guidance. That's noise. Instead, listen to the one thing that has never left your side. Your deep inner knowing. That part of you that feels like home. That part of you that speaks in peace, not panic. That part of you that says you already are enough. Because in a world that constantly tells you who to be, our greatest rebellion is to listen to who you already are. The noise of the world is designed to confuse you. It's not accidental. It's not random. It's intentional, structured, and deeply embedded in every part of society. From the moment you wake up, you're surrounded by voices, media headlines, social expectations, advertising campaigns, cultural beliefs, social media feeds, all competing for your attention, for your loyalty, for your belief. And here's the thing, none of these voices are quiet. They scream, they repeat, they intensify. They speak with such certainty that you begin to question your own thoughts, your own instincts, your own truth. Most people don't realize this, but the world isn't interested in your clarity. It thrives on your confusion, because a confused mind is a controlled mind. When you are uncertain, you are more likely to conform. When you are overwhelmed, you are more likely to obey. And when you are disconnected from yourself, you are more likely to look outward for direction, for approval, for identity. You scroll through your phone, seeing curated lives that don't match your reality. You watch commercials that convince you happiness is a product away. You hear influencers shouting their lifestyles into your ears, telling you what success looks like, what love feels like, what your body should resemble, and what path you should walk. It all feels like advice, but it's not. It's programming. And the worst part, you've heard it so often that it no longer feels foreign. It feels familiar. It feels normal. Actually, because something is common does not mean it is true. The world sells you templates. They give you ready-made blueprints of how to live. But have you ever asked, who designed these blueprints? And more importantly, were they even happy? The system you're in does not reward individuality. It rewards obedience. It teaches you to doubt your own intuition and replace it with someone else's opinion. It teaches you to chase what others chase, to value what others value, even if it empties your soul. It wants you to follow the herd, not question the shepherd. And in this noise, your own voice becomes a whisper, a faint signal beneath the static. You begin to forget what peace feels like. You forget what it feels like to be still without guilt, to follow your heart without fear, to say no without explanation. You feel lost, not because you are, but because you've been taught to look everywhere but inside. This is how the world confuses you, not by lying directly, but by overwhelming you with contradiction. Be independent, but fit in. Be successful, but don't upset the status quo. Be yourself, but only if it's profitable. These mixed messages keep you spinning, second-guessing, hesitating. They keep you consuming, striving, comparing. And in all of that, you never stop to ask, who am I when I stop listening to them? The truth is, clarity doesn't come from more information. It comes from less noise, from cutting through the clutter, from stepping back and asking the hard question, what do I truly believe? What do I value when the world goes silent? That moment, when you begin to hear your own voice again, is the beginning of freedom. You will feel resistance because the noise is addicting. It gives you a sense of belonging, a feeling of busyness that masks your disconnection. But once you start to unplug, even momentarily, you'll begin to see it all differently. You'll recognize how much of your life was lived by default not by design. And that realization is both terrifying and liberating. Amazing, because it means you've been asleep. Liberating, because now you can wake up. When you finally stop listening to the world, when you pause long enough to hear what's beneath the chaos, you'll find something powerful. Your own knowing. Not borrowed, not imposed, but real. And from that place, you no longer need to shout, you no longer need to prove, you just live authentically, clearly, peacefully. The world will keep making noise. Let it. Your job is not to silence it. Your job is to no longer mistake it for truth. You are conditioned before you even begin. Long before you have the ability to think critically, to question, to decide for yourself, the world begins writing its script onto you. Your name is given to you. Your language is taught. Your religion, your gender roles, your values, your idea of right and wrong. None of these things began as choices. They were all inherited. You didn't choose them. They were placed upon you. From your earliest years, you were surrounded by caretakers, teachers, culture, media, and institutions, all whispering or shouting who you should be. They told you what success looks like, what failure means, and what your place in the world ought to be. You were given a mold and told to fit into it. You were never asked if it fit. You were just expected to adapt. And because you were young, impressionable, and dependent on the world around you for survival, you accepted the script without resistance. You didn't know any better. You memorized it. You practiced it. You repeated it. You became it. You were taught how to behave in ways that kept others comfortable. Taught not to cry too loud, not to question too much, not to want too deeply. You were praised when you followed and shamed when you strayed. That's how the conditioning works. It attaches your worth to your obedience. And the most dangerous part of it all is that it feels normal. It feels like reality. You internalize the rules and forget they were ever rules at all. They just become how things are. But they're not. They're how you were trained to see things. That's the distinction that changes everything. You were taught to seek approval, not authenticity. To blend in, not to stand out. To conform, not to express. And in this process, your true self, the one that existed before the conditioning, begins to fade. Not disappear entirely, but hide. It waits in silence for you to return. And so you grow up functioning, perhaps even achieving, but always with an invisible weight, a sense that something is off, a feeling that you're wearing clothes that don't quite fit. You don't know why you feel restless, why success doesn't satisfy, why relationships don't fill the void. But it's there, that ache, that emptiness. And the reason simple. You never really began as yourself. You began as what the world needed you to be. You began as an echo, not a voice. Think about it. How many of your beliefs are truly yours? How many of your fears are inherited? How many of your desires are planted by others? Most people never ask these questions. They simply continue the cycle, living lives rooted in other people's expectations, chasing dreams that aren't truly theirs, measuring their worth by external standards. And they wonder why peace feels so distant. The journey back to yourself doesn't begin with learning more. It begins with unlearning. Unlearning the lies, unlearning the roles, unlearning the limits, unlearning the limits. Only then can you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. It takes courage to do this, to question the very foundation of your identity, to look your upbringing, your culture, your past straight in the eye and ask, is this really me? But that's where freedom lives, in the discomfort of that question. You are not your programming. You are not your conditioning. You are not the labels you were given or the boxes you were placed into. You are the awareness beneath it all, the observer, the presence, the consciousness that was always there, even before the noise. When you recognize this, you begin again, not as a product of the world, but as a reflection of your truth. You begin to live not by default, but by design. You begin to choose, and in that choosing, you reclaim your life. Understand this. You were conditioned before you had a choice, but now you do have a choice. The question is, will you keep wearing the mask they gave you, or will you find the courage to take it off and meet yourself for the first time? Because beneath all the layers they put on you, you are still there, whole, waiting, real. True direction is found in silence, not opinion. This may sound counterintuitive in a world that worships noise, that encourages constant communication, endless advice, and never-ending updates. But the truth is, the louder the world gets, the harder it becomes to hear what actually matters. We've been taught to chase answers from outside ourselves, from teachers, mentors, influences, systems, and traditions. Yet the most profound guidance never comes in a shout. It comes in stillness. There is a subtle wisdom within you, a quiet knowing that has always been present. But it's not loud because it doesn't need to compete. It doesn't beg for attention. It waits for you to slow down, to get still, to listen. This voice doesn't pressure or panic. It whispers gently, patiently, without force. And the reason most people miss it is because they're too busy drowning in the opinions of others. When you are constantly seeking validation, you become dependent on noise. You look around and ask, what should I do? Instead of asking yourself, what feels right? You measure your path by consensus as if truth is a vote. You trade your internal compass for popular opinion, thinking the crowd must know something you don't. But crowds rarely lead to depth. They lead to comfort, to convenience, to repetition. They echo what is already accepted, not what is deeply true. And this is the trap. The more you ask the world for answers, the more disconnected you become from the one place where real direction lives, within. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence. It is clarity. When you sit in silence, you're not doing nothing. You're creating the space where something real can arise, something unfiltered, something authentic, something unshaped by expectation. People fear silence because it confronts them. In the absence of external voices, you begin to hear your own. And sometimes that voice says things that challenge the way you've been living. It might tell you to leave the job, walk away from the relationship, let go of the identity you've clung to. It doesn't flatter your ego. It speaks to your soul. That's why it's uncomfortable, but also why it's necessary. Opinion, on the other hand, is seductive. It gives the illusion of guidance while pulling you further from yourself. It's often rooted in projection. People telling you what they would do if they were you, or what they think you should do based on their limited perception. But no one else lives in your skin. No one else feels what you feel, sees through your lens, carries your story. Advice can be helpful, yes, but only if it's filtered through your own discernment, through your inner silence. When you trust silence, you begin to move differently. You're no longer rushed by panic, no longer reactive to noise. You don't need 20 opinions to make a decision. You listen, wait, and move from alignment rather than pressure. You begin to sense that the most profound answers aren't found in words. They're felt in your chest, in your gut, in that subtle pull that says, this is right, even if no one else understands it. And the beauty of it is that silence doesn't lie, it doesn't manipulate, it doesn't demand. It simply is. Pure presence. And in that presence, your real self begins to emerge. Not the version shaped by society, the one that existed before the noise. That self doesn't need permission to exist. It doesn't need to justify its choices. It only needs your attention. To find true direction, you must first unlearn the habit of noise addiction. You must learn to be still, to sit with your uncertainty without rushing to fix it. You must allow the question to linger without demanding an immediate answer, because silence works slowly. It reveals truth layer by layer, when you're ready, not when you're anxious. And so, if you feel lost, stop asking everyone where to go. Stop polling the crowd. Stop reading every opinion. Go sit in silence, not just physically, but mentally. Turn down the volume on the world and turn inward, because everything you're looking for, the next step, the clarity, the peace, it's already within you. And you'll hear it not in the noise, but in the quiet space between thoughts. That is where direction lives. That is where you meet your truth. The world teaches you how to survive, but rarely how to be fulfilled. From a young age, you're taught how to perform, how to compete, how to keep up, and how to win. You're given a set of instructions. Get good grades, earn a degree, find a job, make money, climb the ladder, retire comfortably. These are the pillars of survival. But no one stops to ask if survival is enough. No one teaches you how to feel alive. You learn how to play the game, how to follow the rules, how to avoid failure. But you're never shown how to feel whole, how to connect with your purpose, how to live with peace. You're rewarded for productivity, not presence. You're applauded for results, not self-awareness. So you become skilled at navigating a system designed to keep you busy, but not necessarily fulfilled. You succeed according to the world's standards, yet something always feels missing. Because survival is about staying afloat. Fulfillment is about diving deep. And the two are not the same. When you're stuck in survival mode, you're constantly preparing for the worst. You're anxious, reactive, cautious. You make decisions based on fear, fear of loss, of judgment, of not being enough. Everything becomes a transaction. Relationships become strategies. Time becomes a resource to be optimized, not experienced. Even your passions are weighed against their profitability. Can you monetize your joy? Can you scale your peace? This mindset slowly erodes your sense of wonder. You begin to believe that anything that doesn't produce an outcome is a waste of time. But fulfillment isn't an outcome. It's a state of being. It cannot be bought, rushed, or manufactured. It must be cultivated. Fulfillment comes from alignment, from living in a way that resonates with your soul, not just your resume. It comes from doing things not because you have to, but because they reflect who you are. It comes from honoring your inner voice, even when the world doesn't understand it. Fulfillment doesn't scream. It's a quiet sense of yes in your chest, and knowing that you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, even if there's no applause. But here's the problem. The system that trains you for survival doesn't leave room for this kind of inner truth. It doesn't reward introspection, rest, or emotional depth. It's designed to keep you running, consuming, achieving. Because the more disconnected you are from your inner self, the more dependent you become on external approval. You buy more to feel better. You work more to feel worthy. You distract more to avoid the silence. But the silence is where fulfillment lives. The world tells you that fulfillment will come after success, after security, after recognition. But have you noticed that after never comes? It just moves further away. You reach one goal and another appears. You meet one expectation and a new one is set. It's a treadmill, not a path. Fulfillment doesn't begin with achievement. It begins with awareness, with slowing down enough to ask, what do I truly want? Not just to survive, but to feel alive. That question breaks the spell. It pulls you out of autopilot and into presence. It invites you to imagine a different kind of life, one guided by meaning rather than metrics. A life where peace matters more than performance. A life where your value is not tied to your output. You can survive in 1,000 ways. You can adapt, succeed, endure. But if you ignore your fulfillment in the process, it all becomes hollow. The success won't feel like success. The comfort won't bring joy. The recognition won't bring rest. Ask yourself honestly, am I living just to survive, or am I here to feel, to grow, to love, to awaken, to create, to be? Because that's what fulfillment is. It's not found in the noise of the world. It's found in the truth you uncover when the noise fades. You were not born just to meet expectations. You were born to live deeply, to experience fully, to return to the part of yourself that isn't trying to survive, but is ready, finally, to thrive. Every external voice comes with an agenda. That's the reality few people want to admit. We like to think of advice as neutral, feedback as objective, and opinions as helpful guidance. But if you look closer, you'll see that most of what people offer you is not pure wisdom. It's filtered through their own experiences, biases, limitations, and unhealed wounds. What sounds like direction often hides a subtle attempt to shape you into something that fits their comfort zone, not your truth. When someone gives you advice, it's rarely about you. It's usually about them, about how they see the world, about what they would do in your shoes, about what makes them feel safe. And this is where the danger lies. If you blindly absorb their words, you begin to carry their fears, their assumptions, their projections, as if they were your own. It's not that people are malicious. Most of them mean well, but good intentions don't equal clarity. A parent warns you not to take risks, not because it's wrong, but because they've lived with fear. A friend urges you to settle down, not because it's time, but because they settled and need to justify their choice. A mentor tells you what's realistic, not because it's universally true, but because they hit a ceiling in their own path. And so you gather all these voices, all these subtle agendas, and you build your life with them. You shape your choices based on what others expect. You filter your dreams through the lens of what's acceptable. You lose touch with what you actually want, what actually resonates, because you're weighed down by everyone else's version of the right thing. Over time, you stop noticing that the voice in your head doesn't even sound like you anymore. It's a collage of others, teachers, family, social media, tradition, culture, and buried underneath it is a quiet voice, one that's been trying to speak the entire time. Your voice, not influenced by fear, not chasing approval, just real, just present. To reclaim that voice, you must first become aware of the agendas around you, not with anger or blame, but with honesty. Ask yourself, when someone tells me what to do, are they really trying to help me grow? Or are they trying to protect their own beliefs? Are they seeing me clearly, or are they speaking from a distorted lens? Do they truly understand where I'm headed, or are they assuming I should go where they went? You begin to see the difference between advice that expands you and advice that confines you. The first encourages your unique path, even if it's unfamiliar. The second pressures you to shrink into something predictable, comfortable, conventional. This is why discernment is more important than obedience. You don't need more opinions. You need more inner clarity. Because once you trust yourself, you can hear someone's advice without absorbing it. You can respect their words without surrendering your own direction. When you realize that every voice has an agenda, you stop giving away your power. You stop looking for permission to live as you are. You stop diluting your intuition in order to satisfy others' expectations. And, perhaps most importantly, you stop fearing silence. Because in that silence, there are no agendas, no projections, no expectations, just space. Pure, open space for you to explore what you truly believe, what you deeply feel, what path is actually yours. Yes, external voices can offer insight, but they should never overpower your own. Let others speak, but don't let them decide. Let them share, but don't let them define. You are not here to fulfill someone else's vision of life. You are here to listen deeply to that inner frequency that's been guiding you all along, the one without an agenda, the one that doesn't need to be loud because it's true. And when you listen to that, you don't need validation, you don't need approval, you don't even need certainty from the outside world, because you finally understand the only voice worth following is the one that leads you back to yourself. Freedom begins where approval ends. It's a simple sentence, but it carries the weight of an entire transformation. For most of your life, you've been taught, directly or indirectly, that your value is measured by how others perceive you. From childhood, you're praised when you behave right, when you please, when you adapt. You learn quickly that love often feels conditional. Smile the right way, say the right thing, perform the right role. Approval becomes the currency you believe you need to survive, and so you begin to build yourself around what others expect. You shape your personality to be digestible. You edit your truth to avoid rejection. You shrink your soul to fit into spaces too small for your real self. The approval you chase becomes a leash. A soft one, perhaps, but a leash nonetheless. And what's most deceptive is how good approval feels. Temporarily. When you're praised, liked, accepted, it feels like connection. It feels like success. But it isn't freedom, because approval is addictive. The more you get it, the more you need it. You become hyper-aware of how you're perceived. You measure your decisions by other people's comfort. You filter your words through the lens of acceptability. And slowly, almost invisibly, you drift further and further away from your own center. Is the hidden cost. When you live for approval, you no longer live from truth, you live from performance. You begin to betray yourself in small ways, saying yes when you mean no, staying quiet when your voice wants to rise, choosing paths that look good but feel wrong. And after a while, even you can't tell if the life you're living is yours or just a reflection of someone else's projection. You can't be truly free while you're still waiting to be liked. Because real freedom means you no longer need everyone to understand you. You no longer need agreement to feel grounded. You no longer negotiate your worth based on how someone else reacts to your choices. You begin to live not for attention, but from intention. Not for applause, but from alignment. But letting go of the need for approval is not easy. It feels like a death of the identity you built to be accepted, a death of the persona you used to survive. And in a way, it is. It's the death of the false self, the one shaped entirely by other people's opinions. And with that death comes something astonishing. Space. Space to breathe, to move, to speak honestly, to feel fully. When you are no longer performing, you can finally begin to live. You begin to follow your own rhythm. Make choices that nourish your spirit. Take risks that resonate with your deeper calling. You begin to feel peace. Not because the world likes you, but because you finally like yourself. People will notice the shift. Some will admire it. Others will resist it. Because when you stop needing approval, you mirror back to others their own dependence on it. And that can be uncomfortable, but don't shrink back to soothe someone else's discomfort. Don't betray your liberation to avoid being misunderstood. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to be whole. And wholeness often requires solitude. It requires walking away from the crowd, standing in your own knowing, making peace with being different. But that solitude is not loneliness. It's sovereignty. It's the sacred space where you meet yourself again, without noise, without distortion, without needing anyone to clap for you. In that space, you find something better than approval, self-respect, inner clarity, a deep-rooted calm that doesn't sway with public opinion. You trust yourself. You move not because it will be celebrated, but because it's true. You speak not because it's safe, but because it's real. You act, not for attention, but from conviction. This is where freedom lives. The next time you feel that tug, the urge to please, to prove, to perform, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this from truth or from fear? Because every time you choose truth over approval, you loosen another chain, and with enough choices, you become unbound. And when you're unbound, you don't just live, you soar. Inner knowing feels different. It's calm, not loud. And this is one of the greatest misunderstandings of our time. We've been conditioned to believe that truth must be dramatic, overwhelming, forceful, that when the right answer comes, it will shout, it will shake us, it will feel urgent. But that's not how your inner knowing speaks. It doesn't yell, it doesn't argue, it doesn't compete with the chaos. It simply is steady, quiet, consistent. We often miss it because we're too busy looking for something that resembles the world's energy, fast, anxious, aggressive. We're trained to trust what's loud, what's immediate, what everyone else is saying. So when something arises in us that's still, gentle, and subtle, we question it. We assume it's too soft to be real, too quiet to be right. But that stillness is not weakness, it's wisdom. Your inner knowing isn't trying to sell you something. It's not playing a game. It's not interested in approval or applause. That's why it doesn't scream. It speaks only when you're willing to listen with sincerity. It arises when your mind becomes quiet enough to feel, not just to think. This knowing doesn't feel like panic. It feels like a deep breath after a long struggle. It doesn't come wrapped in urgency. It doesn't say, hurry or you'll miss it. It says, be still and you'll remember. It doesn't push you. It draws you. It invites, but never forces. And when you do listen, the most astonishing thing happens. The noise of the world begins to dissolve, and clarity emerges, not because everything outside changed, but because you stopped resisting your own voice. There is a sacred difference between the voice in your head and the voice in your heart. The head is loud, analytical, restless. It wants certainty, proof, guarantees. It shouts options and worries about consequences. But the heart, your intuitive center, whispers. It doesn't always explain itself in words. It speaks in resonance, in that quiet yes or no you feel in your body before your mind catches up. And you felt it before. That subtle nudge, not to trust someone, even when everything on the surface looked right. That feeling of peace when you made a decision others didn't understand. That calm certainty that guided you through chaos without needing external validation. That's inner knowing. It bypasses logic, not because it's irrational, but because it operates on a deeper frequency, one that doesn't require external evidence to be real. But to hear it clearly, you must unlearn your addiction to noise. You must stop confusing volume with truth. Just because something is repeated doesn't mean it's wise. Just because many believe it doesn't mean it's right for you. Truth is not democratic. It's personal. And your truth lives in that soft, steady hum beneath all the mental chatter. And this inner knowing will never beg for your attention. It will wait patiently as you run through distractions, as you consult 1,000 voices, as you try to force clarity. But the moment you turn inward, the moment you sit still with intention, it returns. Like a friend who never left, only waited. And the more you trust it, the stronger it becomes. Not louder, stronger, more rooted, more certain. You begin to make decisions without overthinking. You begin to move without fear. Not because you have all the answers, but because you trust the compass within. The world may not understand. That's okay. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to live in alignment with the truth that lives inside you. And when you live from that place, even the most uncertain path feels grounded. Even the most unconventional choice feels whole. If you're searching for guidance, don't just look outward. Be brave enough to listen to the voice inside, the one that never rushes, never competes, never lies. It's not dramatic, but it's divine. It's not loud, but it's lasting, because real knowing doesn't need to shout. It only needs your stillness, your presence, your willingness to trust that what is calm can also be completely true. If you want peace, unlearn the noise. It sounds simple, but it cuts straight to the core of what holds most people back from experiencing inner stillness. The problem isn't that you don't have access to peace. It's that you've been conditioned to chase everything but peace. You've been taught to find answers in complexity, to find worth in productivity, and to find meaning in the external world. All of that noise, the mental, emotional, social static, keeps you distracted from what's already within you. Noise isn't just sound. It's the mental clutter that fills your mind with worry, comparison, fear, doubt, pressure, and endless to-do lists. It's the subtle tension you carry from trying to keep up, to be perfect, to be enough. It's the inner commentary that never stops narrating what went wrong yesterday and what might go wrong tomorrow. Most people live in this storm without even realizing it, because it has become the default setting. But peace doesn't live there. Peace isn't something you find by adding more. It's something you uncover by letting go. To unlearn the noise means to pause and recognize how much of what you believe, react to, and strive for has nothing to do with your true self. It means questioning the messages you've absorbed about success, about happiness, about who you should be. It means realizing that not every thought is truth, not every feeling is fact, and not every opinion deserves space in your mind. The noise has taught you to overthink, overanalyze, and over-identify with what doesn't matter. And here's the difficult part. Unlearning requires patience. It's not about flipping a switch or finding a quick fix. It's a slow, intentional process of becoming aware of your programming. You must be willing to sit in silence long enough to notice what surfaces, your patterns. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. Without the usual distractions, you may feel restless, even anxious. That's because your nervous system is addicted to the stimulation, to the mental noise that has kept you occupied for years. But keep sitting, keep listening. Beneath the chaos, something deeper begins to emerge. A sense of space, a clarity that doesn't depend on logic, a stillness that doesn't require explanation. That is the beginning of real peace, not the kind that depends on everything going your way, but the kind that remains even when life is uncertain. It's the peace that comes when you're no longer pulled in 100 directions, no longer trying to be everything for everyone, no longer seeking outside what you've always had inside. Unlearning noise also means unlearning urgency. The world has convinced you that everything is urgent. Your goals, your healing, your success. But peace is not urgent. It is patient. It waits. It doesn't live in deadlines or pressures. It lives in presence. And to return to presence, you have to step off the hamster wheel and say, enough. Enough trying to prove yourself. Enough chasing validation. Enough consuming more than your soul can process. You were not born into noise. You were born into awareness. Watch a child at play. They are immersed, curious, fully present. They aren't comparing, judging, or planning their next 5 years. That natural state of being still exists in you. It's just been buried under years of conditioning, of voices that told you to hurry, to improve, to compete. When you begin to unlearn the noise, you don't become passive. You become precise. Your energy is no longer scattered. Your attention becomes sacred. You no longer waste your time on what drains you. You move with intention, speak with clarity, and act from a place of groundedness rather than anxiety. You stop reacting to life and begin responding to it with presence and power, and the world will still be noisy. That won't change, but you will. You'll carry your own stillness into the chaos. You'll become a quiet center in a loud world. And from that place, you'll no longer need peace to be given to you. You'll bring it with you. If you truly want peace, don't look for it in the external. Don't wait for the world to calm down. Unlearn the noise. Turn inward. Make silence your ally. And you'll discover that peace was never gone. It was simply waiting for you beneath the layers of what you were taught to believe. In the end, everything you're searching for, clarity, peace, direction, and truth, is not hidden in the world's noise, but quietly resting within you. You were never meant to follow the crowd, to mold yourself to the expectations of others. or to chase endless approval. The world may be loud, demanding, and ever-changing, but your inner voice, your knowing, has remained still, patient, and true. You've been conditioned, shaped, distracted, and pushed to perform. But there comes a moment when you must return. Return to silence. Return to stillness. Return to yourself. This is not the path of weakness. This is the path of power. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to be authentically, deeply, and unapologetically. Don't listen to the world. It speaks in confusion. Listen instead to what doesn't shout, that calm, rooted presence within you. It's been waiting for you to remember. And once you do, you'll no longer need direction. You'll become it.